Cowboys Nation, stop everything you're doing right now because what I'm about to tell you could literally change the entire future of this franchise. We're talking about moves so massive, so potentially game-changing, that by the end of this video, you're either going to be jumping out of your seat with excitement or you're going to want to throw your phone across the room. Either way, you need to hear this. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button right now and hit the notification bell because we drop Cowboys content daily. And trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Let me set the stage here because the Dallas Cowboys are standing at a crossroads unlike anything we've seen in years. After suffering through another gut-wrenching season that ended without a single playoff game, after watching this team stumble to a 7-9 record while other franchises celebrated in January, after witnessing a defense that looked completely lost in the biggest moments, something has finally shifted in Dallas. You can feel it. The energy is different, the conversations are different, and most importantly, the desperation is finally real. Jerry Jones has been backed into a corner, and for the first time in what feels like forever, it actually seems like the Cowboys front office understands that minor tweaks and safe moves aren't going to cut it anymore. This isn't about bringing in a depth piece here or restructuring a contract there. This is about making franchise-altering decisions that could either launch this team back into Super Bowl contention or set them back another half-decade. The pressure is mounting, the fan base is restless, and the rest of the league is watching to see if America's team finally has the courage to make the painful decisions that winning organizations make. What makes this offseason genuinely different from the countless others we've hyped ourselves up for? It comes down to three critical factors that all align at the same time. First, Dallas has accumulated extra draft capital, giving them ammunition to move up in the draft or package picks in a blockbuster trade. Second, the salary cap situation is actually manageable this year, meaning the Cowboys have real financial flexibility to go after premium talent. And third, and this might be the most important factor of all, there are actual difference-making players available right now who could immediately transform this roster. The stars are aligning in a way they haven't in years. Now here's where things get absolutely wild. Two major paths are emerging for the Cowboys this offseason, and both of them target the same glaring weakness that has haunted this team for seasons: the defense. One path involves a free agency signing that could quietly but massively upgrade the secondary. We're talking about a long, physical, ball-hawking cornerback entering the prime of his career, a player who just came off a Super Bowl run and is ready to become someone's number one corner. The price tag? Around $24 million. And honestly, that might be a steal in today's market. But the second path, that's where things get controversial. That's where things get uncomfortable. Because a national ESPN analyst just floated an idea on live television that sent shockwaves through Cowboys Nation. A blockbuster trade that would bring one of the most dominant defensive players in the entire NFL to Dallas. A relentless, every snap, tone-setting monster who transforms defenses just by being on the field. But here's the catch that makes this so difficult to process. To acquire this player, the Cowboys might have to give up one of their most explosive offensive weapons. A receiver coming off the best season of his career. A player that many fans consider absolutely untouchable. So now the questions start swirling. Do you sacrifice offensive firepower to finally fix a defense that has been bleeding points for years? Do you make the safe move and spend money in free agency? Or do you swing for the fences with a trade that could completely flip the identity of this roster? And perhaps most importantly, are the Dallas Cowboys finally willing to endure short-term pain for long-term gain? Because let's be brutally honest with ourselves for a moment. Playing it safe has gotten this franchise absolutely nowhere. Year after year, the same approach. Year after year, the same disappointing results. Something has to change, and this offseason feels like the moment of truth. Let me start by breaking down the free agency path because this one has been flying under the radar while everyone focuses on the flashier headlines. The Cowboys are being heavily linked to Rick Woolen, and if you don't know that name yet, you need to pay attention. This is a cornerback who could immediately walk into Dallas and solve one of the biggest problems this defense has faced for years: the lack of a true shutdown corner who can travel with elite receivers and actually win those one-on-one battles. Think about what we witnessed in the 2025 season. How many times did we watch opposing quarterbacks look completely comfortable in the pocket? How many times did we see third and long situations get converted because the secondary couldn't hold up? How many times did we witness blown coverages that turned manageable plays into explosive touchdowns? It happened over and over again, and it exposed a fundamental truth about this defense. Without a legitimate number one corner, everything else falls apart. The pass rush doesn't have time to get home because the coverage breaks down too quickly. The safeties are constantly forced to overhelp, leaving gaps in the middle of the field. The defensive scheme becomes predictable because coordinators know they can attack certain matchups repeatedly. This is exactly why Rick Woolen makes so much sense for Dallas. Coming off a Super Bowl run with Seattle, Woolen brings a combination of physical tools and proven production that this defense desperately needs. Standing at 6'4" with elite length and range, he gives you something the Cowboys simply don't have on the roster right now: size on the outside that can compete with the bigger receivers in the league. And let's talk about his ball skills, because this is where Woolen really separates himself. Throughout his career, he's racked up 12 interceptions and over 50 passes defended. This is a corner who doesn't just cover receivers, he actually attacks the football and creates turnovers. Now, is Woolen perfect? Absolutely not. There have been moments of inconsistency where he's gotten beat or been out of position. But here's what Cowboys fans need to understand. Dallas doesn't need Woolen to be perfect. They need him to be impactful. They need him to provide stability at a position that has been a revolving door of disappointment. They need someone who can step in on day one and immediately elevate the entire secondary. And when you look at the projected contract numbers, this becomes even more intriguing. According to multiple reports, Woolen could land a deal worth around $24 million over 3 years. Let me break that down for you. That's roughly $8 million per year for a starting caliber corner in his prime years. In today's NFL market, where average corners are commanding $12 to $15 million annually, that's not an overpay. That's legitimate value. That's smart roster building. That's the kind of move a well-run organization makes when they identify a need and find a player who can fill it without breaking the bank. If the Cowboys aggressively pursue Woolen early in free agency, it sends a clear message to the rest of the league. This team is done waiting on young players to develop into what they hope they'll become. This team is done patching holes with bargain veterans who don't move the needle. This team is ready to invest real resources into fixing the defense immediately. That's the mindset of a contender, and honestly, it's about time we saw that kind of urgency from the Dallas front office. But now, let's talk about the move that has absolutely set Cowboys Nation on fire, because while free agency signings are solid and necessary, there's another option on the table that would shake this franchise to its core. And it all started when ESPN analyst Jason McCourty went on national television and proposed one of the most shocking trade ideas we've heard in years. Here's the scenario McCourty laid out. The Cowboys placed the franchise tag on their star wide receiver, but instead of signing him to a long-term extension, they use him as trade bait. The destination? The Las Vegas Raiders. The return? Maxx Crosby, one of the most feared defensive players in the entire league, coming to Dallas in exchange for offensive firepower heading to Vegas. When I first heard this proposal, I had to pause and let it sink in. This isn't some random rumor from a fan forum. This is national ESPN discussion from a former NFL player who understands how front offices think. And the more you dig into the details, the more you realize this actually makes sense for both teams involved. Let's start with why Maxx Crosby might actually be available. The relationship between Crosby and the Raiders organization has reportedly deteriorated beyond repair. Late in the 2025 season, Crosby was shut down for the final 2 games, and according to league insiders, that decision created a rift that may never heal. But it gets even more serious than that. Reports emerged that Crosby personally told Tom Brady, who now holds a minority ownership stake in the Raiders franchise, that he will never play for Las Vegas again. Let that sink in. This isn't frustration that can be smoothed over with a new contract or a promise of better days ahead. This is a player drawing a definitive line in the sand and telling ownership he's done. When a superstar makes that kind of statement, teams around the league take notice. And you better believe the Cowboys are paying attention. So why would Maxx Crosby be such a game changer for Dallas? Let me paint the picture for you. In the 2025 season alone, Crosby recorded 73 total tackles, 28 tackles for loss, 20 quarterback hits, and 10 sacks in just 15 games. Those numbers alone are impressive, but they don't even begin to tell the full story of what Crosby brings to a defense. This is a player who approaches every single snap like it's the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. He never takes plays off, he never coasts. He brings relentless energy and effort that elevates everyone around him. McCourty himself said it best during the ESPN segment. Maxx Crosby makes every single player on the defensive side of the ball better. He wrecks game plans. He forces offensive coordinators to account for him on every single play. he creates opportunities for everyone else because teams have to dedicate extra resources to slowing him down. And when you look at how badly the Cowboys defense struggled in 2025, ranking 30th in total defense, dead last in pass defense, and 23rd against the run, tell me that adding a player like Crosby wouldn't completely transform this unit overnight. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Trading away a star receiver feels wrong. It feels like you're weakening one side of the ball to fix another. And honestly, that's a completely valid concern. Anytime you move an elite offensive weapon, your margin for error shrinks. Your quarterback has to do more with less. Your scheme has to adjust. These are real considerations that the front office would need to weigh carefully. But here's the counter argument that keeps this trade idea alive. How many times did we watch the Cowboys offense score enough points to win, only to see the defense completely collapse and give the game away? How many times did this team put up 24, 27, 30 points and still lose because the defense couldn't get a single stop when it mattered? At some point, you have to acknowledge that the defense isn't just a weakness, it's a fatal flaw. And elite edge rushers like Maxx Crosby don't grow on trees. They're nearly impossible to find in free agency. They rarely become available in trades. When you have an opportunity to acquire one, you have to seriously consider what you're willing to give up. From the Raiders' perspective, this trade actually makes a lot of sense too. Las Vegas is likely heading into a full rebuild, and there's strong speculation they'll be drafting a quarterback early, possibly Fernando Mendoza. That rookie signal caller is going to need help. He's going to need weapons around him to develop properly and give the fan base hope. Trading for a proven wide receiver who just came off a career year would provide exactly that. It's not a salary dump. It's not a desperate move. It's a legitimate football trade where both teams get something they need. The reactions from Cowboys fans have been absolutely wild since this rumor started circulating. Some are completely on board, arguing that fixing the defense has to be the priority no matter what it costs. Others are adamantly opposed, insisting that you can't weaken the offense when Dak Prescott needs every weapon possible to succeed. And then there's a third camp sitting somewhere in the middle, acknowledging that this would be painful, but potentially necessary if the Cowboys are truly serious about contending for a championship. Former players and analysts around the league have weighed in too. Many have pointed out that the Cowboys have been trying to outscore their defensive problems for years, and it simply hasn't worked. At some point, you have to accept that great offense alone doesn't win championships. You need a defense that can get stops, create turnovers, and change the momentum of games. Maxx Crosby provides all of that and more. What makes this entire situation so fascinating is what it tells us about where the Dallas Cowboys are as a franchise right now. These aren't small moves being discussed. These aren't minor adjustments around the edges. These are bold, aggressive, franchise-altering decisions that signal a willingness to take risks and make uncomfortable choices. That's a dramatic shift from the conservative approach we've seen in recent years, and honestly, it's exactly what this team needs. The 2025 season was a failure by any reasonable measure. No playoffs, a losing record, a defense that embarrassed itself on a weekly basis. If the Cowboys respond to that failure with more of the same timid decision-making, then nothing changes. But if they come out of this offseason having added a legitimate number one corner in free agency and potentially swung a blockbuster trade for a dominant pass rusher, suddenly this team looks completely different. Suddenly the defense has teeth. Suddenly opposing quarterbacks have to worry. Suddenly the Cowboys are actually built like a contender. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely critical. Free agency is approaching fast, and the draft isn't far behind. Every decision the front office makes will either move this franchise closer to championship contention or leave it stuck in the same mediocre middle ground it's been trapped in for years. The eyes of the NFL world are watching. The pressure is immense. And for once, it genuinely feels like the Cowboys might actually be ready to make the tough calls. So let me ask you directly, Cowboys Nation. What do you want to see happen? Would you sign Rick Woolen to that $24 million deal and lock up the cornerback position for the next 3 years? Would you pull the trigger on a Maxx Crosby trade even if it meant giving up a star receiver? Or do you think there's another path entirely that the front office should pursue? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I want to hear from the real fans, the ones who have lived through the heartbreak and the disappointment, the ones who still believe this team can reach the promised land if the right moves are made. This offseason is different. You can feel it in the air. The conversations are more urgent. The rumors are bigger. The stakes are higher than they've been in years, and no matter what happens, one thing is certain. The Dallas Cowboys cannot afford to play it safe anymore. The time for bold action is now. If you made it this far, do me a favor and smash that like button. It helps the channel more than you know. Subscribe if you haven't already because we're building the best Cowboys community on YouTube, and I want you to be part of it. Share this video with every Cowboys fan you know, because these discussions matter. This is how we hold the front office accountable. This is how we keep the pressure on. And this is how we prove that Cowboys Nation is ready for a team that matches our passion with championship caliber moves. I'll see you in the next one.